I call this meeting of Sylvania City Council for October 19th, 2020 to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mrs. Capellini?
Here.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mr. Hanem?
Here.
Mr. McCann?
Here.
Mr. Richardson?
Here.
Ms. Stout?
Here.
Mrs. Westfall?
Here.
All 7 members of City Council are present, 6 in the chambers, and Mr. Hanem via Zoom. I'd also like to welcome Mrs. Bigelow back to our table. She's here for Mrs. Booker, who we hope returns to work tomorrow. First on the agenda tonight is the Pledge of Allegiance, this meeting led by Mrs. Westfall.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 is additions to the agenda, and I would like to add item 11B, under committee reports, the committee of the whole meeting held October 8th to discuss the downtown master plan. Mrs. Westfall.
Nothing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Members of City Council. Hearing none. Mr. Sanford.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Schroyer is out ill tonight. Chief Snore.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Aller.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
And Mrs. Breining.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second. It's moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and our agenda is approved for this evening. Agenda item 4 is approval of our meeting minutes from our last meeting on October the 5th. Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move approval of the meeting minutes for the Sylvania City Council meeting held on October 5th, 2020 as submitted.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes as submitted for October 5th, 2020. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and those meeting minutes are approved. Moving to the first business item, agenda item 5 is to set the 2021 schedules for both council meetings and trick or treat. I know it seems early for this. We haven't even made it to Halloween this year, but this is so that we can proceed with the preparation of next year's community calendar. We've done this the last few years. You do have a copy of the proposed council schedule in your council packets. It lists council meetings and plan commission meetings. Again, city council meets the first Monday and third Monday of every month, with the exception of July and August. We do need to delay some meetings because of federal holidays. You see that January 19th is moved to a Tuesday, February 16th is moved to a Tuesday, and also September 7th is moved to the Tuesday. The Plan Commission meets on the first Wednesday after the second Monday in every month. That's so that it'll meet between the first and third Monday nights of the month. You'll notice that followed the pattern established this year to not have the first meeting of City Council on July 5th, and not to have the first meeting of August, which would have been on August the 2nd schedule. Those can be added when we get there if we need to add them. Any comments? Tuesday night work all right for everybody? Okay. Let's have a motion to set these regular council meetings for 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the proposed schedule of regular meetings for calendar year 2021 for City Council and the Planning Commission. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We also have as agenda item 5B to set the date for trick or treat as October 31st. We typically do it between 6 and 7:30 p.m. That's what we're doing this year. And during this COVID year, the Lucas County Health Department has asked every community to do it on Halloween, preferably between 6 and 8, so that you don't have some communities jumping to another community and having too much exposure in any one community. We'll see how that works out this year. Hopefully it will not be an issue next year. We have always set our Halloweens on October the 31st. The only exception I can remember is when it was the same night as a Northview-Southview Friday night football game. And I'm not sure that was a good change as it turned out. All right, is there a motion to set Halloween for next year?
Mr. Mayor? I
Mr.
have a
Richardson?
quick question.
Yes.
Wait, I did notice most of the other communities did 6 to 8. Just out of curiosity, what was the thinking behind 6 to 7:30 for us?
A long time ago, we were 6 to 8, but city council chose to limit the hours to an hour and a half and rolled it back to 7:30. That's what it's been for a number of years, but no, city council can set the hours as they see fit. I think city council's experience at the time was that the smaller kids, the younger kids are all out between 6 and 7, and you're only going to get older kids after 7 and certainly after 7:30. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's who's coming around that late.
Yeah, my mind went to, hopefully by 2021 Halloween, COVID will be behind us, but who knows? And I looked it up. Toledo, Oregon, Maumee, Perrysburg, and White House are all 6 to 8. And maybe to kind of keep from the jumping and to keep consistent, maybe we'd want to do the same thing out of safety. That's just my thought.
Let me ask a couple of questions. Laura, in the mayor's office, do we ever get complaints about Halloween ending at 7:30?
In my experience, no.
Chief, you got any input on that?
No, we haven't had any issue with Halloween for almost 2 decades.
So I'm happy either way. I think it's too late to change it for next week.
Oh, sure, of course.
But for next year, you can certainly get in line with the other communities. Most of the ones you mentioned do it normally on Halloween. But some communities do it on a Sunday afternoon.
Sure.
And some, I think Northwood was one of those. So if you'd like to switch it back to 8 o'clock, or you can wait and see how it goes this year, see what kind of input you get, that's council's call.
Well, we've set it for 7:30 for a long time. I've never had a complaint about that. I'm comfortable leaving it as it is, but if people feel strongly that about adding a half hour, I guess I don't have a problem with that.
I can go either way as well, but I would like to make the decision this evening if we can, just so that we can
Yeah,
publish it as
the
needed.
calendar needs it. Yeah, so I think that's definitely a good call. And it's, I don't think anybody has a strong feeling on it, and it's not certainly a hill I'm willing to die on. Not that I care that much, but I guess I'll make a motion to set Trick or Treat 2021 for October 31st from 6 to 8 p.m.
One more quick thought.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump on that.
No, that's all right. So,
We have
No,
quick,
just-
before we come, can we have a second from you first?
sure, I'll second.
Okay, now we can discuss.
Okay, so I'm just thinking back to when my kids would trick or treat from 6 to 7:30, and just walking in my neighborhood, I don't think they could have possibly gotten more candy, and the candy lasts for months and months. I mean, you get this much candy in an hour and a half. How long do you need to be out there?
I know. My thought was just to be in line with the other communities in the fear of the sort of community hopping of somebody goes, 6, I don't know.
But really, it doesn't matter.
You're right. And it's not a hill I'm willing to die on. I really don't care either way. I just wanted to bring it up. That's all.
Mr. Mayor, I know that Mr. Sanford had indicated something that he wanted to share.
Mayor, in regards to the calendar, just setting the date, you wouldn't have to set the time tonight,
Okay.
just the date is needed, but if you want to move forward with the time, that's fine, but just wanted to throw that out there.
And even if we publish the time on the calendar, we've got plenty of time when we're proofreading the calendar to change the time on it as well. So there is a motion and a second on the floor to set it from 6 to 8. If there's no more discussion, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we'll proceed.
And everybody.
Mr. Sanford, do you have any update on the calendar?
I do not, but it's progressing and should be, have a lot more in the next month, really wrapping it up and getting it to the press.
All right. Moving on to agenda item 6, you have in front of you zoning ordinance application SUP 1 2020. This is submitted by David Sabo for a zoning change from B2 General Business District to B2 Special Use District for property located at 7600 West Sylvania Avenue. That's the old Anderson's General Market. I have some pictures of other shooting centers by this company, which I'm going to pass around the table, but I'd like Mr. Sanford to give us some background on this before we refer it to the Planning Commission for their recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had gotten a call, it's been probably about a month from Harmon Realty, their agent, that said they had a prospective buyer, for this property, and not just the Anderson store, but the entire complex, and wanted to know what was required. Then Kevin and I met with that realtor, Stephanie Coleman, and she told us more about their plans and directed us to the website of the Midwest Shooting so we could find out more about the two stores that are operations that they now have, and one in the Fort Wayne area and one just south of Lima. And she was very straightforward about how they're operated, and that the two people that will be running the business have a health club type background for a gym membership type, and that's what they promote, that you can join the club and then use the shooting range, as well as having other things for sale at the store.
Mr. Sanford, are you suggesting that there's going to be a fitness center associated with this?
No, I just gave that was their background, and,
Okay.
and it's it's a shooting range, but it's
Okay. But you must be fit to shoot.
I'm not, yeah.
They're club managers, that's
Right, and they're gonna run it like a health club. I'm not as familiar with this type of business, and when that explained, I understood more that people are gonna be going there on a regular basis so they can shoot their firearms in the range. The immediate question I think we had, and Kevin can, talk about his experiences too, that the soundproofing, I guess, is very well done, and that's probably the biggest concern I could see coming from neighbors.
And did you say it was the whole complex they're purchasing?
They're purchasing the whole thing, and they are not changing the other
Right, so they
stores.
put
They're
it in
only
the other
changing,
things.
they're only going to be, but they're going to be the owners. They're going to be the landlord of the entire shopping center.
Mr. Stanford, is the shooting range contingent on the sale of the property? Is the purchase of the property contingent upon the rental?
I don't know, that would be between them and the current.
Do we know that?
I think it's contingent on them getting the zoning change. I think that's the first step that Kevin went through the whole process, and this was the first step of the process.
A comment for myself is I would rather not keep going to Maumee, and this would be nice to have in my backyard, but that's only a personal preference. But the way it's done there and in other ranges, I feel that'd be a good addition.
I know that the owners and the company they had hired to market it, they've had a little trouble in finding the right fit for that site.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of different people, a lot of different uses looked at it, and this seems to be a real good fit.
Is there a restaurant element in it too? It looked like there was like a I don't want to say a bar, but like a counter with food.
There was a restaurant. Oasis had a catering business, and I think there's another business that possibly would be going in there. And I do believe in one of the other open spots, they're going to have some type of a coffee shop or something. That's what the realtor told us the day that we met with her.
Katie, did you mean in the shooting?
In the picture.
Yeah, she-
Oh, inside, yes, there is a lounge or something in there. I don't know the extent of it, but we could probably find that out exactly what's going to go on inside the.
The liquor license doesn't go with this, right?
Thank you.
Mhm.
Beat me to it.
Liquor license, this, I mean, how is,
I didn't get a sense that was part of it. No, I don't think that's, I don't think that's a part of it.
Yeah, I would start to struggle there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They sometimes have numbers, numbers in there, so that just might be like.
Yes.
I don't know, that one picture in there looked like a party room.
I'm just curious if the chief has any experience with shooting ranges in communities and if there's anything good, bad, or indifferent that we should be aware of.
Well, there used to be a gun club here in town, and we actually shared that space with when we used the gun club that was here. That's where our Sylvania Police Range was, and really didn't have any issues with that. There's a strong, community of gun ownership in our town and in the Sylvania area. We already have a experience with the gun club or the gun store here at Edco in town, and those businesses are highly regulated. Actually, we find out about more. They pass on information if there is criminal activity, and over the years, if there's any type of impropriety going on, they usually pass that information on to us. They are highly regulated, and it is another venue for people to safely exercise the use and enjoyment of the firearms. So I don't really have any knowledge of an issue that would be a problem with this kind of business.
Thank you.
Is it something that you guys would use, that the police force would use?
There has been, so they have reached out a bit, and they do offer the benefit of the use of the range for law enforcement for certain, probably on a limited basis, but they are supportive of local government and local enforcement.
When I was reading the write-up
Mayor, I'll send this
that
out.
was put in the packet, it looked to me like this is a pretty specialized operation. Not the retail side of it is what it is,
It should come
but
to the
the
planning
actual
commission.
enclosure where the gun range is occurring and the sound attenuation stuff that's going to be included. Is administration comfortable in dealing with, I don't know that you've ever dealt with anything like this before, because this is an odd duck in my mind. Are you guys comfortable that, that you're going to handle the decibel levels or whatever mechanisms we're going to utilize
It's a concern that I've brought up to both Mr. Sanford and Mr. Aller. There are houses right behind this facility, and even if they do a really good job of sound deadening, we can't have neighbors hearing pop, pop, pop through the middle of the night. I don't know what we found out about operating hours, but they're going to have to do a really good job not to have that muffled noise coming out of there.
Right.
Would we be able to make us would this come under a special use permit?
That's what this is, a special use permit
Okay.
application.
So we would be able to write that into it?
Yes, you can. When it gets back to you, yes. I have designed a couple of firing ranges myself in the past, and you have to have a roof structure over the top of it that bullets can't escape out of either. So we've always put precast concrete deck over the top, and it's when you have concrete, it's the weight of the material that does the soundproofing. And obviously they're going to have to do more than just concrete block on the back or whatever wall is behind it. I think they might be able to do it. There is a firing range in the township police station. We could listen to that one, but I think we'd be better off listening to one of this company's ones, which are where, Bill, in Lima?
Cridersville, just south of Lima.
Okay. Or with the one you go to in Maumee. The performance there, though, won't necessarily be the performance of this company.
Mayor, I was going to mention that, just that we regularly shoot, between the township indoor range, and then there's a very large range at the Iowa Park that Little Police operates. And, there will be days when they're shooting all day. So when we arrive, there's already people shooting. When you walk up to the building, you don't hear, they'll have, I think they have 25 lanes there, and you don't hear shooting. are going on. Now, I know that building was built as a range, it's made out of, poured concrete, but just my experience of indoor ranges, you usually don't hear a lot of noise on the inside.
Is the contemplation here just pistols, or is this rifles as well?
They would have to have a pretty large facility in distance. You can't shoot rifles at close range. I would be surprised, but I'm not familiar with them.
Because that would be one of the things I would be concerned about with special use. The other question I would have, and this is something I have absolutely no expertise on, so I'm going to look to you, Chief. Obviously, there's different types of cartridges and different armor-piercing rounds and different things like that. Are there going to be limits established on that type of stuff to make sure? Because even if they've done what they can, if I were the person living directly behind the range, those would be things that would be very concerning to me.
I would. The trend is now that when you're going to shoot at an indoor range, it has to be lead-free ammunition, so it's a special type of ammunition. And it also has to be, they call it pre-frangible ammunition. In other words, it'll break up easier. I don't know, but I'm assuming with their business model that they're going to sell the ammunition that's being shot on the range. But again, I'm not, intimately familiar with it. But I would suspect that that's the lead-free thing has been around for like 10, 15 years. And if you want to use the ammunition on the range, it typically has to be a certain type.
Okay, to comment on that, the facility in Maumee, they have high caliber rifle in one of the single stalls, and they do allow 22 or AR-15 style charges. So you have to be mixed use probably.
Okay.
This project will go through the normal procedure, which means it's referred to the Planning Commission for their review and recommendation. Then it comes back to you and you set a public hearing. The proposal will come in and give a more detailed explanation of what they want to put in. You can ask them questions and then we'll see if any of the neighbors want to come in and talk about it. I think if I was a neighbor behind there, I'd come in and talk about it. Mm-hmm. But I think this is just the start of the procedure. All we're looking for tonight, I wanted to give you this start on it, but all we really need to do tonight is a motion to refer it to the Planning Commission. Mr. Hanem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been to a lot of shooting ranges over the years, and the little bit I've done a little bit of research into this group, and they seem to be a high quality operator, which would be appropriate for our Sylvania community. But I'm sure the Planning Commission will research this and provide us with a good report. So, Mr. Mayor, I move that we refer application number SUP 1-2020 to our Planning Commission for review and recommendation.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that application number SUP 1-2020 be referred to the Planning Commission for their review and recommendation. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 7. I believe this is the fourth and perhaps final group of Cushman Road easements, Mr. Eller.
Have one more that will be coming to you. Just a single.
All right.
This is essentially the last batch. We did have one. I think I mentioned last time that the house was going through the sale process. It has been closed on, and we weren't able to get that one up in time for this meeting. So we'll be bringing it to the next meeting. But these 4 easements are all in agreement with the property owner and are ready to move forward.
All right. The first 3 are with the same applicants, and I will go around 4 different councilmen to start with these. But again, we'll start with you, Mr. McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 84-2020. All members of council having received copies in advance, I'll read by title only. Accepting a temporary construction easement from George Henry Roberts and Bernadine Roberts for the improvement of Cushman Road, dedicating the temporary easement for public purposes, appropriating funds therefore, waiving the second and third reading, and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that ordinance number 84, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Mr. Mayor, I move final passage of ordinance number 84-2020.
Been moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 84, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 84, 2020 is approved. Agenda item 7C, ordinance 85, 2020. Mr. Cron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 85, 2020. All members of council having previously received copies, I will read by title only. Accepting a temporary construction easement from George Henry Roberts and Bernadine Roberts for the improvement of Cushman Road, dedicating the temporary easement to public purposes, appropriating funds therefore, waiving the second and third readings, and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 85, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move final passage of ordinance number 85, 2020 as an emergency measure.
It's been moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 85, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 85, 2020 is approved. Moving to agenda item 7D, we have proposed ordinance 86, 2020. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 86, 2020. All members of council having previously received copies, I'll read by title only. Accepting a temporary construction easement from George Henry Roberts and Bernadine Roberts for the improvement of Cushman Road, dedicating the temporary easement for public purposes, appropriating funds, therefore, waiving the second and third readings and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 86, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
I move final passage of ordinance number 86, 2020.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 86, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 86, 2020 is approved. And finally, agenda item 7E, proposed ordinance 87, 2020. Mrs. Cappellini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 87-2020. All members of council having previously received copies, I'll read by title only. Accepting a temporary construction easement from Jonathan E. Kujawa for the improvement of Cushman Road, dedicating the temporary easement for public purposes, appropriating funds, therefore, waiving the second and third reading and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that ordinance number 87, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you. I'd like to move final passage of ordinance number 87-2020.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 87, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 87, 2020 is approved. And we'll look forward to your final easement next meeting. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 8, police dispatch staffing. The city has 2 changes coming along that you are aware of. The near-term issue is that we have had one of our 6 dispatchers take a job with another dispatch center outside of Lucas County that's not going to be shut down and be merged into Lucas County. We cannot provide 24/7
dispatching with just 5 dispatchers on a long-term basis. So Mr. Aller and Chief Snore have worked with Sylvania Township and come up with a short-term proposal. By short-term, I mean about a year. And we're going to have Chief Snore come up and describe this solution to how it'll work, how it'll affect this building, and the cost.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as the mayor said, we did have one of our dispatchers, Ben Ellis, did accept a job with the city of Perrysburg as a dispatcher. He actually started there on the 19th, so today. Right now we have 5 dispatchers. We can make it through for a short time. We've done this in the past when someone's been off on sick leave or that sort of thing. Unfortunately, we are heading into the holidays. That is the really tough time for them to cover with all the vacations and that sort of thing. So right now we anticipate we can make it till about December 14th before it really become a stress on our staffing and availability. There's also always the possibility someone could be off for medical leave or something like that. So that in mind, several weeks ago, as soon as we found out that we would be having an employee leave, we started talking to township. Initially, the plan was possibly to merge our operations until this consolidation comes to fruition. However, that plan did not go well with the organized labor of the township. So we did some brainstorming. Actually, Captain Miller came up with the idea to contract for the midnight shift. Our midnight shift is the lowest call volume, averages about 10 calls per day. So what we did was we looked back at some of the consolidation figures and using the rates that they were figuring for costs of services with about 10 calls per day, we came up with a fee of about $3,500 a month that the city will pay to the township for the midnight services, for the midnight dispatch services. Now, the fact that this has been discussed before, but we're all in the county system. We actually use the same telephone system as the township MyTel, so that we use the same phone server, if you will. It's a computerized phone system. So we've already done some initial setups, and we're engaging in some testing of the phone system now. But basically, and it can even be preset by time. Mr. Sylvania has been helping us with that. So basically, every day at 11 p.m., the phone system will switch over, and the township dispatchers will log in with our group, our Sylvania City group, and then the officers will turn over to the township channel and roll it on the township channel for the next show. So at this point, we don't know of any disruption of service or any concerns. When we start the process, we will do some testing before we actually make that final switch before we stop staffing. So it is just part of the transition of stepping down to this. We could even, we could make it with 4 employees and still run the day shift and the afternoon shift. If we were to become lower than 4, we would have to either look at speeding up the process to consolidate. I know that there's been some discussions of smaller PSAPs, 911 answering points, consolidating quicker, or perhaps more service to the township. So, but this is the first step to providing a continuity of service through this consolidation.
The contract shows a start date of November the 1st, but you're talking about starting December 14th. And that's as negotiated with our dispatchers. They chose that date.
So as we're working, obviously this is a tough situation for them. A year and a half ago, they had no idea that this was on the horizon. The dispatcher that this kind of came up suddenly, and he had applied for this job back in February before the pandemic. Never heard anything. All of a sudden, oh, by the way, we're ready to hire. So they caught a lot of our dispatchers off guard. I am speaking with them on a daily basis about the schedule. I'm trying to make it work for them as much as possible in the city as well. And we know certainly by December 14th that we really need to intervene on this situation. But if we can maintain their schedule in the sense of normalcy up until that's our goal. So I would ask for a little bit of flexibility with that date. Ultimately, if I decide to start it, earlier in November or first week of December, I think we can
And the township is also flexible with the start date.
They are. They've been very accommodating with this. Actually, I think that this is being presented at the township trustees meeting tomorrow. So
The cost of $3,500 per month, how does that compare with what the savings will be?
well, it is significant when you look at the cost of an employee with benefits and just the hourly wages. It is a savings. I don't know what I don't know the cost breakdown on the benefits, but it is less than what we were.
So this is not a cost issue.
No, it isn't an increase in cost at all. Certainly a savings in cost. Just in overtime alone, not staffing that shift, there's shortages because we run with only 6 dispatchers for 24/7 operations. We run short every month. There are we call them open shifts. There's just no one scheduled because of the way the schedule goes through. You just don't have enough employees to cover all the shifts. So there is a significant amount of overtime every month. We budget, I think, $50,000 for overtime just for that staff right off the get-go when we start the year. So there will be less exposure to overtime on that shift for certain, and the base cost of $3,500 a month will cover is less than we would pay for a full-time employee. And also, as a contingency, in addition to the $3,500, if we were to need dispatch services on first or second shift, 2 of our employees come down sick, something like that, we are contracted at $50 an hour, a little higher cost because days and afternoons are much busier than midnight shift, probably 3 to 4 times busier, depending on the block of hours. If it's that 3 to 7, 3P to 7P, that's sort of the busiest time in the city and township, then it's well worth it because we're going to pay that money to our dispatchers anyway. We didn't have any available. What I don't want to have is people working double backs where they're only off for 8 hours and they're coming right back to work, or working 16 hours. Our policy right now in the city is you can't work more than 12 and a half hours at a time unless it's an emergency. So we wouldn't want our dispatchers working 16-hour shifts or doubling back and stuff, especially in the days and afternoons, which are the busiest times.
Chief Skor, I'd just like to ask a technical question that I understand is we're on the same backbone infrastructure of the phone.
No, we're actually just going forward.
So what do we have a fallback just in case the line?
It's just that, we'll be using public lines, essentially.
So
just like we would now.
What happens if there's interruption in that?
Just like we would deal with it today.
How do we deal with it today?
You just wouldn't have, if our phones go down, the phones go down.
Okay.
It hasn't happened. One of the big advantages that we have is that we use a PRI, which is a much more stable, mode of transport for telephone traffic. And it literally goes from our basement underground and comes up in GP's building or Frontier's building.
In the CO right here?
Yeah, the CO right here. Yeah, so it's a really short run. We've never had a PRI go down. We did lose a card at one time, but we get notified real quick. I think that downtime was like 15 minutes. That was several years ago. And again, non-emergencies. It doesn't include 911. 911 is not separated. Those calls will route to the county just like they do now.
Okay.
They'll end up.
That's where I was going.
Oh, okay.
Just right.
And 911 will automatically go over if we don't answer for the county system.
Great. Okay.
So, Chief, it's just to clarify, from the average citizen who might have an issue, you need to call 911 at 1 a.m. They're not going to even notice a change.
Other than if they're really paying attention, when they answer the phone, they'll say Sylvania Township. Other than that, it'll be answered right here in Sylvania. That continuity of service, we're not ready, and I don't think the public's ready. Certainly, the county's not ready to transfer our services. They don't have personnel in place yet. I'm sure if we give them some lead time, in the next year, if the township were to start losing more employees, or we were to lose more of our employees, that might be an option we have to look at. But that continuity of service, and still being just 2 agencies on one radio channel, because once we get to that, consolidation next year, we'll have probably 6 or 7 agencies on one channel. So this will be a nice step down for us and maintain the continuity of service here in Sylvania.
And the radios will work just fine.
Yeah, we are already, again, with another benefit of the countywide system, we are all on the radio. It's literally just 2 notches on the dial on the township. So that's what all you do at 11 o'clock each night, to switch on. We actually scan. So if I would have my radio right now, you would hear the township calls coming through. The only time that they would stop is if there was city traffic on there. So we actually operate, right, that parallel all the time as right now. So it's a current operation that we listen to them. Now we'll actually be in the same channel. We do switch over their channel to communicate as we do with fire as well. So many times with fires on this radio as well.
Chief, when we were having a conversation about the 911 consolidation last year, we had a significant amount of conversation about what council and the administration want to do in regards to staffing as an entry point. And obviously that's not going to be going on here for this midnight, what I call the graveyard shift, the midnight, the 11 to 7 a.m. shift, correct? Right. Is there any way we can track people wanting to come in, or how can we measure that? Because as we do the countywide consolidation, it would be good to have that information to help us discern what's the appropriate amount of staffing that we would want at a local level versus, I know we're much busier during the other 18 hours or 16 hours, but I just wanted to know if we could track that somehow.
We've been doing, one is calls for service. So if there's a call for service here at this building, then they can't be lobbied. So that's something that we can easily pull that information. I don't know that there are a lot of those calls. There are some. Sometimes, most often it's a domestic violence person leaves home. They don't have anywhere else to go, especially if they don't have their cell phone. They come here in the lobby. So we take bonds for people here at all hours. A lot of times they come in at night. Same with the highway patrol. If they arrest someone out of state, their policy, they have to post bond. So they'll stop doing that sometimes in the middle of the night. We have been trying to gather those numbers over the last year just because of anticipation.
Right.
Obviously, the day and the afternoon is, especially evening, because it's a bedroom community. When people get home from work, that's when they want to do business, whether it would be with the city or with the police department. That's when you see people coming. So
great.
So this building will be locked from 11 to 7.
Coming up.
And Chief, we have a call, a telephone available for people to call?
Yes. So we already have a call box there. During the pandemic, that vestibule was locked, so it was secured anyway. And that is even though it's a call, it seems like it's like a local, walkie-talkie thing. It actually is a phone. So when somebody pushes that, it actually rings the phone. So we will have that program to just ring the phone at the township. So the technology is already there. Have a coincidence.
So after hours, the outer door will remain unlocked and the inner door will be locked.
Yes. We're currently working and getting some estimates from a vendor to harden the lobby a bit, so that if we're not here in the building, that someone can't easily get into the interior of the building, the police department. We're going to have to make some changes to the lobby, the configuration out there. We're working on that. That'll be in 21. Some point 21.
Chief, but that would need to have happened when the dispatch. Then you just.
It would have had to happen.
Yeah,
right. This is like I said, it's kind of a stepping down process to that change in service.
Chief, this is Doug Hainham. Can you I think this is the first time it registered with me that we were delaying the changeover. Can you address that at all? What do we know about that?
Delaying the changeover?
Well, the 911 consolidation has been postponed from January to September. Did I miss that, or?
Oh, no, it was always planned to happen sometime by July was the target date. Now, the latest update that I've heard is September. However, they have already appointed the new director of that Council of Governments. They also have made steps that I believe they've already got health insurance worked out with Toledo. So, I mean, it's picking up speed. A smaller PSAP like ours could be one of the first ones consolidated. So we really could be, I would say we're on a, probably a 9 to 9 month, projected consolidation date. They're going to want to bring some of the smaller PSACs in early to test out the new concept. And I think there's been discussions that we would be a candidate for that. So there's a little bit of a flexible schedule there to get this done. But right now that looks like it's a possibility that we could do on the 1st.
Mr. Hanem, it was delayed from sometime this year to next year because of the COVID virus situation. The county's been focused on that response and just wasn't getting this done.
Right.
So we're now looking at, this $3,500 we're looking at as a less than a year expenditure. And
probably 9 months, 9 to 11 months, probably the most.
Okay. Well, I'm interested in the second part of this issue as well. So I thank you for your presentation.
Okay, before we act on this ordinance, why don't we have Mr. Aller come up to the podium and talk about the next step, which will be being consolidated into the countywide dispatching possibility and the need for council to begin making some decisions about that.
Right, that will be taking place, as we mentioned. It's anticipated now to begin in September of 2021. We initially had costs from the county on what our commitment was going to be for the years 21 through 24. That was anticipating full year 2021 being part of the consolidated service. Now that that's put off to September, those costs are basically just, we're anticipating paying a quarter of that. We verified that with the county that is the plan. But let's say it doesn't happen until November of next year, then it would be 1/6 and they're going to prorate. However, at that time is when we have to have our house in order. We have to have our house in order prior to that. But at that stage is when it becomes reality. And we have to be able to cover things such as record keeping, property room maintenance, bonds that the chief talked about. We have a host of duties that the current dispatchers do in addition to their dispatching duties, and 2, some duties that our other personnel, officer personnel, are having to function because we just haven't had the civilian staff that other departments have. Our dispatching unit has operated with 6 employees. The smallest dispatching unit besides ours in the rest of the county is 10. And those additional employees have performed those record keeping and maintenance duties and things like that. So we have to be able to continue to provide that. And, our plan is to hopefully retain some of our existing dispatchers at a records clerk pay, but retain some of those personnel because they have been really good to the city and enable us to keep that center at a 6-person staff. So what we have prepared is information that we'd like to provide to council on options that we have in order to be able to provide those services. In addition to the work that has to get done, we also mentioned, if somebody walks up to that door, what do we want them, how do we want them to be serviced? What hours do we want somebody here to be able to talk directly to someone that comes in? Or what hours are we comfortable with, them reaching somebody via the telephone? So those are options that we've laid out for you and would like to review with the safety committee on what your wishes are and how you would like us to move forward. We think we have a various set of options for you to look at. And obviously it all comes with benefits on what we're able to provide. And it also comes with costs on, what that is going to cost to be able to provide a certain level of service. So We're ready to review that with you, and we'd just like to, at some point, the first item here we would like to address tonight, if you're comfortable in doing so, so that we can get that moving with the township and move forward. But the long-term information, we'd like to set up a meeting and review that information with you and see how you'd like to proceed.
And when were you ready to set up that safety committee meeting? You want to do that in the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months?
I would say in the next couple of weeks at the safety committee's convenience, but at its earliest convenience, if you will, so that we know how to start planning and moving forward in what this lobby is going to be for a long time to come. So.
All right, Mr. Fry.
Couple items, Mr. Mayor. First, on the prior issue, the one that's in front of us specifically, when that flop over does occur, if you could just give us a heads up in case we're hearing back from members of the community. I don't expect that we're going to be caught flat-footed, but just in case.
It'll be at least a 2-week notice.
Okay.
We've got to get people's schedules back online and that sort of thing. And just like with the notice, we've gotten a lot of questions from our staff, especially with this person one home leaving. So that's another cause of sense of urgency, not only planning for next year's budget, but also we want to have a good plan and answers for the people that work here too. So.
Understood. And I guess to the question from Mr. Eiler as far as timing goes, the only thing that I would ask is if we're going to do that, the sooner you can send that information to me at least, the better I like it. Yeah. And that gives me the chance to be me, and then I'll ask a bunch of questions and you'll answer them, and we'll alleviate a lot of extra time.
We have much of the information together. We just I don't have it. I haven't got it put into a format that I think would be easy for the committee to understand. That's what I'm trying to collect that and make those duties listings and that kind of stuff so that you can see that rather than having to unpack technical. But I would anticipate that you would have that. You'll have that within a few days, definitely. Yeah.
I think just for a point of clarification, we did know this was coming. This was part of the discussions when we talked about the 911 consolidation. So this is no surprise.
Yeah.
This was part of our budget discussion as well.
Yes.
All right, if council's ready, then we'd like action on ordinance 88, 2020 to agree to enter into an agreement with Sylvania Township. Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 88-2020. All members of council having received copies in advance, I'll read by title only. Authorizing the mayor and director of finance to enter into a public service dispatch services agreement on behalf of the city of Sylvania, Ohio with Sylvania Township, waiving the second and third readings and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that ordinance number 88, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move final passage of ordinance number 88-2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 88, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 88, 2020 is approved.
Mr. Mayor, I want to thank the township for working with us on this and accommodating us, and I will represent that I will touch base with at least Mr. Mahoney and let him know that I appreciate it. And I think this is indicative of the kind of cooperation that we've been able to do with the township on a lot of things, and it's an indication of the health of our community.
With that, Mrs. Westwell, would you like to try to set a date?
Yeah, I would. Mr. Allen, is it timely enough if we would meet before our next council meeting on November 2nd, or do you feel like you need it prior to that?
I think if we met prior to the meeting, I think that would be sufficient.
So And thoughts about how much time you'd need? You think 45 minutes? An hour to be safe?
I think maybe an hour to be safe. I think I could present the information and, run through the information depending on the questions.
So for the members of the safety committee and any other members of the council who want to join us, would Monday, November 2nd at 6:30 work? And safety committee is myself as chair, Mark Fry, Brian McCann, and Lindsay Staff. Work? Okay. So I'd like to move that we have a safety committee meeting to review the long-term staffing recommendations on Monday, November 2nd at 6:30 p.m.
It's moved and seconded to set a safety committee meeting for Monday, November 2nd at 6:30 p.m. in these council chambers. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and we'll have the clerk post that meeting.
Mr. Mayor, one quick follow-up if I could. So, Mr. Aller, I was going to have the same conversation with Mr. Fry had. What I heard you say, I think, is it's complicated to put all those pieces together, but you do think you can get us something in advance, or you would rather just have a discussion?
No, I'll make sure you have something in advance.
Okay.
I should be able to have it within a couple of days, but like you said, definitely by the
Yep, that sounds great.
Mr. Aller and Chief Snow have been working on this for months. We've been bouncing back different possibilities. We're going to have as a result of this 11 to 7 shift shutting down this building, we're going to get some more understanding of how that works. How difficult is it? Is it not a problem? But we're going to give you some options with 3 or 4 employees before.
Mary, or I'm sorry, Ms. President Westfall, I would want to participate in that meeting on the 2nd, and I would hope that as long as the county remains in a red rating, that we could have a Zoom option for that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hannon. We, of course, would welcome your participation, and we'll have a conversation with Mr. Silvernail's over there giving us a thumbs up, so I think we're good to go.
It is convenient that it's the same night as the council meeting. That makes it a little easier. All right, are we ready to move on?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
On to page 2 of our agenda item 9. Mr. Aller is staying at the podium because he can talk about this one as well. If you haven't noticed, there is new development going on at the northwest corner of Haroon and Brent. The existing house that was at the back of that property has been demolished, and a new, smaller unit has been built at the far western part of that. There are additional, I think, 4 more lots that can be sold.
Yes.
And we need a water line to serve all those that's tappable. What's there now is a main line that's not tappable adjacent to the pumping station. Well, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the water line that runs along the property right now is a 16-inch transmission, one of our main transmission mains that goes out to serve the rest of the city. And we don't allow individual service connections into that main because the less holes that you have poked in the straw, the less chance you have for a leak. So we don't open that up to direct connection. Accordingly, we need to have a water line constructed across that lot. And in talking with the property owner, we have agreed to move forward with a situation in which the city actually constructs that water line, and then we would be reimbursed the cost recovery charges like we've done on other water lines. We haven't had one for quite some time. The last one that I can think of is actually the water line that runs to the new elevated tank, our Fossil Park elevated tank. There was a water line constructed as part of that project that has a cost recovery attached to the properties along its route. And if they should ever connect, then they will pay their basically assessment, if you will. It's just not on taxes, but they will pay their cost of the project across their property. This is the same manner. That would be our intent. We would construct the water line, and then on its completion, no total cost, we will just attach a cost recovery to each of those lots. And when they come in and get developed, they will pay their share. We will almost immediately recoup 20% of the cost of this property because the one property is already built. So once we know those costs, we'll send them a bill for, there's 5 lots here. So we'll send them a bill for 20% of our final costs and they need to pay that. So that will come back to us immediately. I anticipate these 4 lots will probably develop fairly quickly and we won't be holding this money for very long. So we did receive quotes from 3 contractors that you see there, CF Smith, Provo Construction, Ohio Excavating, and at those costs. CF Smith was the lowest bid. However, they do not have experience installing 8-inch diameter water. And we're just not comfortable in being the first. Water lines are pretty, it's not rocket science, but you roll one gasket and you've got a big problem. And so we're just not comfortable moving forward with that. We would recommend to council that we move forward with Provo Construction at a cost of $33,158. Provo does a lot of projects in town. They've done the site work for SOMO here. They did the sanitary sewer project on Sylvania Avenue. They've done multiple projects in the city. And we feel much more comfortable. We know that they are familiar with this kind of construction. They've done it in the past. And so we would recommend moving forward with Provo Construction at a cost of $33,150.
Question.
Yes.
So who is responsible for the maintenance of lines like?
We have water mains in town that are 90 years plus, still in operation.
And then do we have built into the budget? I'm new to all of these costs, so I'm just trying to catch up with everything. Do we have built into our budget anticipated lifeline replacement of different infrastructures like this? I know we've been working on the easements for the Cushman Road project and other things.
Yeah. From a depreciation expense standpoint that you typically see in businesses, that's not, unfortunately, that's not how governments have historically worked. Historically, you'll take a look at that 5-year capital improvement plan and your expenses that you're going to have in that, and then see how your rates have to adjust to be able to cover that. With gas fee 34, when that came into existence for probably about 10 years ago, that started pushing governments to look more towards the depreciation expense and being able to cover that long-term replacement cost. And so we're still working towards that, but we're behind the 8 ball for more business for a long time, and still working to get there. So we do build into our rates the ability to cover those capital projects that we talked about, but to fully fund depreciation, governments typically don't do that.
And is there ever a calculation done, or has there been a study where when there are new developments done in town, where you take the amount of infrastructure that's being installed or constructed and comparing it to the anticipated tax that's being brought in off of that property to see if in the long run the property is paying for itself, including that maintenance? This will be my last question.
From a utility side, that's looked at because it's done through the rate structure. So it's looked at a little differently than if you were to say street maintenance or things of that nature, because you don't know what that you don't know what tax dollars you're actually going to receive. One person on that street pays city income tax, or 50 people on that street pays income tax. So we never looked at it from that standpoint. On the utility side, it's a little easier because everybody's going to use water, everybody's going to use sewer. But on the on the other more income tax expense items. We never.
I'm just curious because with the master plan we've been doing, it has me thinking about different types of development. Just in comparison of a large big box store versus smaller stores and the amount of tax income that comes from the two different ones, and just applying it to the situation. So thank you for humoring me for a moment.
No problem.
One more piece of background. When we go into a neighborhood and work the streets, we take a look at the water lines, and we oftentimes roll in a water line improvement project with a street project if it's needed.
Yeah, it's different from this project.
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned the Cushman water line project. With that project, it enables us to take a look. We got a hold of Jones and Henry, our engineer, and said, "Hey, we've got to replace this water line. It goes underneath US 23. You're going to do that once, and so you better get it right." And so we contacted Jones and Henry, and we said, "Okay, we want to take a look at a couple. We have a couple other lines that cross 23. What if we lose that line? What if that line goes out of service?" And took a look, and so we're upsizing. That line currently is an 8-inch water line. We're going to increase the size of that to a 12-inch. We looked at increasing it to a 16-inch, but there wasn't really any benefit from pressure or service. So we're going to replace an 8-inch line with a 12-inch line. And those are the kinds of things that we kind of take a look at when we have an opportunity to replace some of those things.
And we have to bore under US 23.
Yes.
We can't open cut that.
No.
Mr. Allen, one question about the Sea and the Spit people. What's the largest line they've ever done?
From a water standpoint, about the only thing they've ever done is just house services. We were able to complete the sanitary sewer. They performed the sanitary sewer construction, and they had installed several house services, 6-inch diameter. We got the main line constructed, but not with the ease that we typically do. And so that kind of came into play too.
Got it. Okay.
In your letter, when you say you ask for references of similar work, none were provided. They just told you that they didn't have similar, or you just never heard from them.
Just never heard from them. We said, no, they said, no, we've done it. So where? And we never got it.
Okay. They've been informed that you're recommending the next bidder.
Yes.
All right. That's not something we do often, but it is appropriate in some cases. All right. We do have ordinance 89, 2020 to accept this proposal for construction. Mr. McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 89-2020. As all members received copies in advance, I'll read by title only, accepting the proposal of Provo Construction for the 6302 through 6342 Brent Road Waterline Extension, appropriating funds therefore in the amount of $33,158, waiving the second and third readings and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 89, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move final passage of ordinance number 89-2020 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance 89, 2020 be final approved as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 89, 2020 is approved. Thank you, Mr. Aller. Moving on to agenda item 10, we have proposed ordinance 90, 2020. This is to accept the annexation to the city of Sylvania property that was voted on by the county commissioner several months ago. It is in effect the Village Inn. Further comments about this, Mrs. Brining?
No, Mr. Mayor, this is the final step in the procedural process that we have to take to officially accept the property into the city. We actually have 6 months from the meeting approval, so the 6 months is up now. The village can officially be in the city.
Thank you. Mr. Hanum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move adoption of ordinance number 90-2020. All members of council having previously received copies, I will read by title only. Accepting for annexation to the city of Sylvania, Ohio, the territory described in annexation petition number 201-5, for which James E. Moan is the agent, and as hereinafter described, providing for the interim zoning of said territory, waiving the second and third readings, and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 90, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move final passage of ordinance number 90-2020, waiving this and declaring an emergency. Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 90, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 90, 2020 is approved. Agenda item 11 is committee reports. Agenda item 11A is report of the Finance Committee held here in these council chambers on October 13th. Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there was a Finance Committee held October 13th, 2020 at 3:30 p.m. right here in the council chambers. The primary subject was the 2021 budget. Present were Finance Committee members, myself, Mary Westfall, as well as Mark Fry, Jack Keenum, and Patrick Richardson. Also joining us, other council members, Brian McCann, Katie Capolini, and Lindsay Stow. From administration, Mrs. Brining, Toby Schroyer, Kevin Aller, Bill Sanford, Mayor Stow, and Chuck Silvernail joined us. I did open the meeting and quickly turned it over to our Finance Director, Toby Schroyer. And Toby had forwarded budget detail to all members of council in advance, so everyone had the opportunity to review the information prior to the meeting. Mr. Schroyer provided highlights of revenues and expenses for the 2021 budget, and he did share that he was presenting a balanced budget, balanced general fund, and balanced capital fund. Mr. Schroyer addressed the auditor's position, indicating that he believes that we will be able to transfer enough funds from the general fund to the capital fund to resolve the issue. Also, he reviewed the financial summary and capital improvement funds. After addressing questions about the bonds, as well as the CARES funds, municipal court, and police communication and dispatch, Mr. Hanum moved that the Finance Committee request administration to prepare legislation for the first reading at the first meeting in November. Mr. Fry seconded that motion, and the motion did carry. With no further business, Mr. Fry moved to adjourn, and Mr. Richardson seconded, and that motion passed, and the meeting was adjourned at 5 p.m. So, Mr. Mayor, do you need a motion now for the legislation, a formal motion?
Yes.
Okay, so I move that administration prepare legislation for the first reading at the first meeting in November.
Second.
First reading of the budget.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to prepare legislation for the 2021 budget for reading and consideration at our first meeting in November. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Added agenda item 11B is a report of the Committee of the Whole meeting held here in council chambers on October the 8th for discussion of the downtown master plan with the consultant, Michelle Johnson. Mrs. Westphal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Breaking through here to find my notes. Here we go. Yes, on Thursday, October 8th, 2020, we met here in council chambers as a committee of the whole at 12 noon, and the primary subject was downtown Sylvania master plan Q&A. Present were myself, Mary Westfall, as well as council members Patrick Richardson, Katie Capolini, Mark Fry, Brian McCann, Lindsay Stow. Mr. Hanum was excused. Other members of administration, Mayor Stow, Bill Sanford, Leslie, Brian and Kevin Aller, and Chuck Silvernail joined us. And of course, Michelle Johnson was present from environmental design. I opened the meeting and turned it over quickly to Michelle Johnson. Michelle said that she felt very good about the public input and overall felt that there was significant agreement on the things she was proposing. The voting structure format provided additional clarity to what the community wants to see, and that was very helpful. She feels that environmental design is ready to go to the final plans. There was some discussion about the need for a clear crosswalk path from Summit Street to Somo. Michelle showed that the original plans did actually show a street going into that area, and at minimum, Michelle did say she expected that there would be some type of crossing assistance at that spot. Michelle did agree that we do want to safely move people across that area to get them to the downtown business area. There was some discussion about Heritage Sylvania. Generally, Heritage Sylvania is well received, and there could be expanded use for that area. Additional questions and discussion focused on widening the sidewalks, the realities of moving the utility building at Becker Place and Maplewood, finding a path through from Main Street to the alley, the needs for parking garage, and the reality of moving the police station. So there were lots of points of discussion that she was going to take into consideration, but she does plan to come forward with the final plan and presentation. While there was a motion to advance legislation about that final plan, upon further discussion with the administration, that motion would be better presented once we have actually seen that finished plan and final design. So the meeting did adjourn at 1:30.
No action is required right now, but do you have any updates since then, Mr. Sanford?
No, Mayor, I do not, but I'll be in contact with Michelle and with the timing. And I know one question will be this meeting we have with her in person because of COVID and some of the restrictions. We'll see how that goes. And if it's at the end of this year, 2020, or if we get into 2021, if that makes more sense to me. So that's still open-ended.
Thank you. Are there any other committee reports to be made at this time? Or any committee referrals? Hearing none, there are only two informational items tonight. Reports of the Architectural Review Board held last Wednesday, and the Municipal Planning Commission held last Wednesday. You can see that there were a number of signs approved at the Board of Architectural Review, and there was no business for the Plan Commission. Unlike the meeting that's coming up in November, where we're going to have the gun range that'll be on the agenda for the Planning Commission. With that, if there's no further business, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and this council stands adjourned for 2 weeks until its next regularly scheduled meeting on Monday, November the 2nd at 7:30 p.m. Thank you all for attending.
Safe.